How do I figure out what's next in my career? How do I align my work with what truly matters to me? And the biggest question of all, can I really design a career that I love? Hey, my name is Jen Smith, and I believe career success doesn't have to come at the expense of living a radiantly happy and healthy lifestyle. As a former HR leader and recruiter turned career coach, I've seen how traditional paths can leave people burned out or boxed in. And I know there's a better way, one that invites you to let go of outdated rules and outside expectations, one that evolves and supports meaningful growth over time. Whether you're feeling stuck, craving more clarity, or ready to expand within your current role and beyond, this show is for you. So grab your coffee or your kombucha, pull up a seat, and get ready to explore practical, modern strategies for building a meaningful, heart-based career. Because you deserve a long, radiantly happy, and healthy career. This is the Flourish Careers Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Flourish Careers Podcast. I'm Jen Smith, your host, and I'm really glad you're here with me today. It's actually a stormy spring morning as I'm recording this. The rain is tapping against the window. Everything's pretty gray outside, and there's even some rumblings of thunder in the background. But it also feels very alive in that early spring energy kind of way. And it felt like the perfect backdrop for this conversation. Because today is our final episode of season 11, and I really wanted to end on something I've been thinking about a lot lately. What if we looked at our careers the same way we look at seasons? And I really wish someone had shared this with me earlier in my career because it would have made so many moments feel a lot less confusing. So think about that feeling of restlessness or moments where things stop working the way they used to. That in-between space where you're not quite sure where you were or where you're going or what's next. That isn't failure. It's a change of seasons. Your career moves in cycles just like nature. And when you really start to understand that, the transitions that once felt like setbacks start to feel like something else entirely. It's likely a signal that something new is ready to grow. So today, we're going to walk through the 4 seasons of a career and how this connects to heart-based career development. And of course, I'm going to share a few simple, practical ways you can move forward today, whatever season you're in. So let's get into it. I want to start with a story. A few weeks ago, I was on a coaching call with someone, and let's call her Leah. And Leah had been in her field for about 12 years. 12 years of high potential ratings, multiple promotions, and lots of praise for her great work. And she started the call the way a lot of people do. She was a little apologetic, kind of like she wasn't quite sure she was allowed to feel what she was feeling. And she said something to the effect of, I don't know what's wrong with me. I look at people who are further along than I am, and I feel like I'm falling behind. I've been doing this work for over a decade. I should be further along by now. I should feel more settled, more certain, and I just don't. And then she said something I hear quite often. Everyone around me seems to know exactly where they're going, and I can't even figure out if I still want to be here or where I'm headed. So I want to just pause for a second because if that resonates, you are not alone. I have heard some version of that sentence more times than I can count. And every single time it gets me because what she's describing isn't failure. It's a change of seasons. And here's another thing I've noticed. Usually around the 10, 12, 15-year mark in a career, there's this unspoken expectation, probably from the outside world and probably from ourselves, that we should have it all figured out by now. The restlessness that you could probably get away with in your 20s doesn't feel acceptable anymore. It's not really understandable when you feel like you want to make a change. So when that shows up, when the work starts to feel like it belongs to an older version of you, when the goals that once lit you up or excited you start to feel like someone else's goals, the story you begin to tell yourself is, I'm behind. I'm failing. Something is wrong with me. But that's not what's happening. So I said to Leah, you haven't fallen behind. You've outgrown your current path. And that's not a problem. It's actually really good news because it means you've grown, you've evolved, you've done the work. And just like a plant that's gotten too big for its pot, the discomfort you're feeling isn't failure. It's a signal you need a bigger container or a different environment. And that conversation with Leah is exactly why I wanted to make this the season 11 finale, because her experience is not unusual. In fact, I think it's one of the most common and most misunderstood experiences in a working life. And what I want to offer you today is a different way to think about it. Not as a problem that needs to be fixed, but as a season that needs to be understood. So let's talk about what's actually happening. Here's what most of us were taught. A quote unquote successful career is a straight line up. You choose a path, work hard, climb higher, don't look sideways. And if you pause or pivot or feel like something has shifted, it gets labeled as failure or confusion or job jumping or not being grateful enough for what you've built. But that traditional way of thinking leaves out something essential. It treats your career as a thing that happens to you, a ladder you climb, rather than something that grows from the inside out. And think about it, ladders are static. However, life changes, priorities change, values shift, and your career gets to do the same thing. It is not a static thing leaning up against a wall. And that's exactly where heart-based career development comes in, because heart-based careers aren't about working for a nonprofit or making less money for the sake of creativity. It's not about the passion quotes you see on Instagram. It's about pausing to reflect, learning to match your unique skills and strengths and experiences to what you actually want in your life, in your career. It's executing a thoughtful strategy that prioritizes your well-being and aligns with your values in this season of life. It's career development from the inside out, a process of creating harmony among your body, your mind, and your spirit. Because when you approach your career in this way from the inside out, you start to notice things that traditional models would have you ignore. Like when your work stops feeling like yours, when your values shifted, but your role hasn't, when your body is sending signals that your resume doesn't know how to account for. And it's interesting because research backs this up. Career development researchers have documented for decades that most professionals move through repeating cycles of exploration, growth, reassessment, and reinvention multiple times across a working life. Your brain literally produces less dopamine from work you've already figured out. The novelty fades, the fit changes, you change. And for people doing this from the inside out, that shift is not a small thing. It lands in your whole body, and it's easy to mistake it for failure when it's actually a signal that a season has shifted, which is why talking about it matters. So let's talk about the different cycles. Your career moves in cycles, and you can think about this like the 4 seasons. Most of us will move through all of them, probably more than once, and almost never in the order that we'd expect. This isn't a checklist or anything like that. It's just a different way of thinking about career. So let's start first with spring, since we are in spring at the time of this recording. When I think about spring in terms of career, this is the season of curiosity and possibility. Think about the first time you stepped into a role that genuinely excited you. Maybe it was your first real job or a pivot you finally made years after thinking about it. Everything is new. You're learning fast, asking questions, meeting new people, and you probably didn't exactly know where you were going, but you were genuinely excited to figure it out. That aliveness, that's what spring feels like in career. Fun fact, I was thinking about this and I've actually started almost every one of my new jobs was in spring, literal spring, April, May, June time period is when I started every single one of my jobs. And when I hit publish on the Flourish Careers website for the first time. Interesting correlation. Then we have summer. Summer is when the effort starts paying off. The learning curve levels out in the best way possible. So you're not really scrambling anymore. You're contributing. Opportunities come your way. Your confidence grows. People start coming to you as an expert. This is summer. It's the season we celebrate probably publicly. So promotions, recognition, the sense of arrival. And if you've ever had a stretch where everything just feels like it's clicking, that is summer. And it's worth savoring every single bit of it. And then most likely something shifts. The work that once stretched you starts to feel familiar. The problems you used to love solving feel like you've already solved them. And you start having this conversation with yourself that maybe you haven't said out loud to anyone just yet. Is this the right fit for me still? Is this still where I'm supposed to be? So you might start having those questions come up. That's fall or autumn, the season of reflection and realignment. And that's exactly where Leah was when she got on that call with me. 12 years in, successful by every external measure and wondering if the path she'd been on still belonged to her. She called it falling behind, but I call it a season of pausing and reflecting. That's autumn, because that's exactly what it was. Her whole self was beginning to ask, what's next? And then there's winter. Winter is the season that nobody wants to talk about because from the outside, it can look a lot like nothing is happening. It might look like stepping back from a role or taking longer than expected to figure out what's next. It might look like a quiet chapter after a long stretch of full throttle growth in summer. Leah wasn't quite in winter yet. She was standing at the edge of fall, starting to maybe feel a chill from the breezes. But I've worked with plenty of people who were deep in it. And here's what I want you to know. Beneath the surface of winter, something important is always happening. A new version of you is taking shape. The ground is being prepared. Winter isn't the end, it's the beginning of something that you just can't see yet. So I don't know about you, but for me, knowing this feels so grounding and so reassuring that just like nature that goes through seasons, it's not forever. It will come around and you'll be back in spring and summer in no time. Which, by the way, the in-season planner was also built around cycles, honoring where you are in the cycle of growth, rest, renewal, and reflection. Because not every season calls for doing more, and more. Some seasons call for getting quiet enough to hear what's next. And that quietness or that stillness is not a detour from your career. That is heart-based career development in action. Now, here's something I've noticed after years of doing this work. Most people come and find me in the fall or the winter. They've arrived at their first coaching call or they find the podcast when something has already shifted. That discomfort has gotten loud enough that they can't ignore it anymore. And when they finally give themselves permission to say, something is changing and I need some help. And that's perfect. That's actually okay. It's perfect timing because here's what I want you to know. This is the part that changes everything. Fall and winter are not the final destination. It's the doorway. Every single person I've worked with who did the inside out work, who gets honest about their energy, their impact, their values, who stops trying to fit themselves into a path that no longer is for them, every single one of them found their way back to spring. Not the same spring they started in, a better one that actually fits who they are now. And that's what I wanted Leah to hear. She's not stuck. It's not the end of the story. This is where the next season begins. So let's talk about what to actually do. Let's get practical. Hearing this is one thing, using it is another. So step one is to notice what season you're in. Not the season you want to be in, the one you're actually in. Look at your energy, your motivation, your curiosity. Are you in a period of exploration and possibility? Or maybe growth and momentum? Or maybe you're starting that reflection and questioning. Or is it something quieter or more uncertain that you just don't know yet? Write it down. And then when something shifts, stop calling it being stuck or something is wrong with you and start calling it maybe fall or a winter season. Step two is to follow your energy. So for a week or two, simply notice what parts of your work feels genuinely alive and what parts feel like you're checking boxes or going through the motion. Not whether or not you're good at them, not whether or not it pays well, just what gives and what takes your energy. That's your body and your values talking. And in heart-based career development, it's a signal. It tells you where the alignment is and where it's drifted. And then from there, you can make adjustments. Step three is to ask questions. So instead of what's wrong with me, try these questions. What parts of my work feels really energizing right now? What feels complete? Like I've given it all I have and it's done. What areas or interests are pulling your attention, even when you push them aside? I want you to sit with those. Those are signals in terms of what could be next. Now, this isn't going to give you a 5-year plan overnight, but it will start pointing you in your next best direction. And then step 4 is to take tiny action. Please stop waiting to feel ready. If you're in fall or winter, readiness isn't coming first. Clarity is going to come from taking action, from small experiments, honest conversations. The next season doesn't just announce itself. You step into it one tiny action at a time. Think about the change of seasons. Now, I live in the Northeast, so we get to experience the change of seasons every few months, and they don't happen drastically. Usually it's a gradual shift from winter into spring. The snow starts to melt. The grass looks a little greener. Gradually, the days get longer. So it's a gradual shift. This is not a flip the switch and we have all the answers and we're in the next season. So now let's recap what we covered today. Careers don't move in straight lines. They move in cycles through spring, summer, fall, and winter. And most of us move through all 4 more than once in our working lives. Heart-based career development asks us to approach that cycle from the inside out, matching your strengths, energy, impact, and values to what you actually want and executing that with intention and honoring your body, mind, and spirit. And that also means recognizing and taking the seasons seriously. When they shift, when the work stops feeling like yours, it's not a sign that something has gone wrong. And that's a signal worth listening to. So notice it. Follow your energy. Ask different questions and take one tiny step before you feel ready. You have not failed your career. You've just changed seasons. And that's not the end of your story. In fact, it might just be the most interesting part. Okay, my friends, this is a wrap for season 11 of the Flourish Careers Podcast. I can't even believe I'm saying that. 11 seasons, over 160 episodes, and I still feel the same way I felt the very first time I pressed record. Well, maybe I'm a little less nervous. However, I know that this work matters. You matter, your career matters. So thank you so much for being here. In a few weeks, I'll be back with something a little bit different for the summer, so be sure to subscribe and keep an eye out for what's next. In the meantime, come find me on Instagram at flourish.careers and tell me, what season are you in right now? I'd love to know. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, the notes from today's episode are on the blog at flourish.careers/blog. We'll talk to you next time.